Hey everyone, my name is Jurec. I am a third-year ancient language student, and Lorenz, who is my pastor, asked me to present a lecture, well, basically on Jesus. Specifically today, though, I'm going to talk about the fact that he was prophesied, he was born, he was crucified and resurrected. That's a very big part of today's talk. And I'm not going to cover that today, but it's very important for you to know that he's ascended into heaven. I don't know what all of you believe. I am a Christian. I was raised in a Christian house. I only adopted the faith at the age of about 12. My father used to be a pastor. He now practices as a psychologist. But I grew up in this household where basically everything was, it's set. You get taught Jesus, he's God. He was born of a woman with the name Mary. The whole Christmassy thing with the stalls and the goats and the sheep and the donkey donkeying in his ear, whatever donkeys do. He's just kind of, you accept it, You're like, oh, this is a donkey and the baby, And because I have a twin sister and she was small enough, they could take my twin sister and they could put her in the manger, and she could be baby Jesus, although she's female. That'd be really nice, because I was too fat, too fat. Yeah, I was fat once. And the reason this is important is it's the center of the Christian faith. The center of the Christian faith is not only Jesus as the figure, but what he did, what happened to him, how he reacted upon certain things on earth, how he died and then was raised from the dead. In fact, Paul in 1 Corinthians 15, I'll show you the scripture in a while, literally says that if Jesus Christ was not raised from the dead at all, then the Christian faith it's useless. It's in vain. There's no merit to it. There's no reason to believe it. And there's no compelling whatsoever to give ear to anyone who speaks about him. So I'm going to talk about the importance of the resurrection. Why is it important for the Christian faith? Why is it important if you're a Christian? Maybe you know something about why it's important. I'm going to talk about the case against the resurrection. Like I said, I study ancient languages. That's Hebrew, Greek, stuff like that. And in my field, believe it or not, most of the people don't read the Bible because they believe in it. They read the Bible because they want to attack the story and tell you why it's false. So they would say, oh, it's a bunch of nonsense because, people don't raise from the dead. I mean, okay, what's your name? Is it Nodia? Yeah. Okay, so everyone, Nodia. For those of you who know Nodia, okay, I'm going to waterboard Nodia. I'm going to drench him in water. Is he dead? If I drown him in water. How dead is he? Spit? Deader than dead. Very dead. Immensely dead. Great. That's all I wanted to know. So, if Nodia is dead, do you expect to see him here tomorrow? Like walk in the door and, hey Nodia, what's up? Whoa, you were dead. I killed you. It wasn't casual. I held you underwater. You couldn't breathe. Like, what are you doing here? You don't expect that. And that's exactly what happened. That's the problem. The disciples come to a place known as a tomb where he put dead guys. And they're like, we're going to find Jesus here. He died. They saw him dead. Dead like Nodia is hypothetically dead. And they touch his body and, what body? There was no body. He wasn't there. And then I will discuss the case for the resurrection. Why did it happen? Then secondly, I'm going to talk about what are Messianic prophecies. The word Messiah comes from the Hebrew word mashach, which means to pour oil on someone, to anoint someone. It means that the person is anointed, chosen, royal, like a king. I'm going to talk about the prophecies concerning the Messiah. Do any of you know what a prophecy is? Okay. Prophecy, basically in this sense, is when I say something now, like in 2 years it's going to rain in that corner and it's going to be really wet. And then 2 years later in that exact corner it rains. That's a lame example, but that's basically what it is. It's predicting the future. It's predicting the future. And then I'm going to talk about the question on whether Jesus actually fulfilled these prophecies or not. So let's start. Gegrapte, it's a Greek word for "it is written." I just wanted to give you people some Greek to read. And that makes it interesting. There are some of the scriptures in the New Testament that talk, the ones with the asterisk there, those are the ones that indicate prophecies concerning Jesus, specifically his resurrection and his death. And these are things that he would say himself. So in Matthew 16:21, Jesus told his disciples, oh, by the way, I'm going to die. I'm gonna be so dead, you're not going to find me. But 3 days later, I'm going to raise from the dead. And for the first part, they were just really confused because why would he say such a thing? I mean, how would you feel if Nadia comes to you tomorrow, hey, dude, the people, my own people, they're going to kill me. Yeah, I'm going to die. And then tomorrow I'm just going to walk back. Like, it's weird, right? And just imagine that. Imagine Nadia dies. He's like, oh, by the way, I told you so. Yeah, and then he's back alive to tell you, oh, by the way, I told you I'd die. It's weird. What do I believe? I mean, seriously. This is not normal. It's not normal for you to tell your friends. Jesus' disciples were like this. Oh, by the way, I'm going to die. And then when he was done dying, and he's alive again, oh, I told you so. Yeah, I was dead. How many people can say that? These are all the scriptures. I'm not going to run through each and every one of them. It's going to take way too long, even though some of them are only like 3 or 4 lines in English. These are just more examples. But the key one I want to focus on is, once you want one back right there, technology, is this one. There. That's the one I mentioned in the beginning, and it goes as follows. There it is in Greek. Don't worry, I won't read it in Greek for you. It says, if it is preached that the dead are not raised. So if it's preached that there is no resurrection, for those of you who are Christians, what we believe is when a person dies, they come to a point that they're raised from the dead again. They get a new body. They receive a new life with God forevermore. And there were some people around this time when Paul was preaching that were known as the Sadducees. Those were the high priest who crucified Jesus, Caiaphas. For those who know the story, was a Sadducee. He was a kind of Jewish priesthood person, and they believe that the dead will not be raised. They believe if you're dead, you're dead. You're dust. Okay? You're as dead as Nadia when I waterboarded him for the first few moments. However, he says if it is preached, so some people come around preaching, that's that word there, that the dead aren't raised. Then, not even Christ is raised. Because if Christ did not rise from the dead, if the dead do not rise, neither is Christ risen from the dead. And he goes on saying, then our preaching is in vain, and your faith is in vain. Well, your faith is in vain. Because if we proclaim Jesus, who claims to be God, he literally came to earth, claimed, I'm God, he didn't say it in so many words, he used other examples, we'll get to that. But he said, I'm going to die, I'm going to raise from the dead. And if you believe in me, John 3:16, whosoever believes in him will not die, but have everlasting life, then he was absolutely lying. And Paul says, if Jesus did not raise, they're all dead. It's useless. You remain dead, you perish. You perish basically means you disintegrate, you become nothing. There are theories to suggest for Christians that Christ didn't die and he wasn't raised from the dead. He also prophesied, Jesus, according to the Gospels, according to these 4 guys who wrote the books, that there will be people who say, oh, by the way, he did not rise from the dead. There's no proof. There's nothing out there. Because, come on, it's not every day someone walks up to you with scars in their hands and like, oh, by the way, remember I was dead the other day? I mean, seriously, let that sink in. Let that sink in. I mean, the moment you're sitting with your disciples at a table and you're like, this is my body and this is my blood, drink and eat and you'll have life. The next moment, it sounds so victorious, it sounds so kingly, it sounds so epic. We read it and we're like, oh, that's so sweet, He's having dinner with his friends before he dies. You don't think about it like that. You read the story and you're like, oh yeah, that's pretty cool. Yeah, I had dinner, and then he died and he rose from the dead. That's cute. Yeah, I'm saved. I mean, consider that. You're having the last meal with someone you just spent the 3 most profound years of your life with, and he's literally telling you that this is a symbolism of my death. That's brutal. That's absolutely brutal. If I go to my mother this afternoon and be like, Mom, I really would like to have one final dinner with you because I'm going to die. And this is a symbolism of my death. Here's some wine, here's some bread, eat it and remember me forever that I died. And so when they come into the Garden of Gethsemane, one of Jesus' apostles, Peter, when they want to seize him, when they want to capture Jesus, he takes a sword and he cuts off one of the guards' ears because, no, you can't take him away, you can't kill him. But he tells Peter, don't you think that if I ask my Father, he would send angels, legions, he calls them legions, which is just a Latin word for many, legions, 12 legions of angels to protect me. But then the scriptures, this word right there, that word right there, wouldn't be fulfilled. And so you have some people coming around proclaiming something called the swoon theory. You know what swooning is? When you're seriously in love and Sarki walks through the door and Yanni, or Henny, wherever he is, sits there and Henny sees Sarki and the sun is shining, but hey Henny, what's up? Sarki's a beautiful girl, right? Let's just imagine Sarki, okay? Sarki is just amazing. And so Sarki walks into the door and she looks utterly dashing. The sun is shining behind her head and her hair is blowing in the wind. Or so, I don't know. Maybe you don't like hair blowing in the wind. Maybe you like playing chess. I have no idea. Anyway, the point is, she's beautiful and you swoon. So what is swoon? It's like, that part. Yes, I can speak Afrikaans. That's that part. That's the swoon theory. So basically what happened there, no, Jesus wasn't in love. He didn't die. So what they're saying is, this is not what I'm saying, what they're saying, some people, is he was on the cross, brutally beaten, spoonerisms, brutally beaten with whips 39 times. For in case you're wondering, a Roman whip isn't that thing you play with in the backyard with that. It's not that. It's a piece of leather that's stretched out into different parts with pieces of bone and rock and metal on it. And so when they strike the person's back, it literally tears off the flesh. So he was beaten like that about 39 times. And he gets to the cross and he's crucified, and according to these people, he was like, he fainted, like Henny who's in love, and then, oh, sorry, I'm back. He just never died. He just, oops, sorry. Yesterday I was in sign language class, and the sign language lecturer was signing this whole story about a woman walking down the aisle and she trips, and then everyone's like, oh, shame, and just to teach us some, I don't know, storytelling signs or something. But that's basically what happened there. That's what they think. He just fainted and then kind of got up. Oh, sorry, slicha, sorry. Slicha is just Hebrew for sorry. You know, Jesus spoke that. The problem with this theory, though, is if you're beaten 39 times on the back with a whip that tears off your flesh, and you're nailed to a cross in a position that presses your lungs up against your chest so that you can't breathe for 3 hours, and you're hanging for your life, and in order to breathe, you have to push yourself up. Archaeology confirms that the Romans most probably impaled him here, not really here as they usually indicate, probably here. Because if you hit someone there, they're like, you can't breathe like that, especially if your feet are stuck there as well, and then they bend the knees, and so you have to push yourself up to breathe for 3 hours. Most of the people took days to die. Then again, he was beaten brutally before put there. And so they say he just fainted. The problem with the theory is it's very unrealistic. If I waterboard Batman, okay, I'm not going to waterboard Batman. I wouldn't even dare. But if I try to kill Nadia and I'm successful, okay, besides the fact that he is maybe a year younger than I am and probably way stronger than I am, we'll get to that later. He's gonna be dead. You don't do something so brutally, so intensely, and have someone just go, oh, sorry, just fainted. It's not WWE. This is the 1st century. If the Romans wanted to kill, they killed. So that's just bad history. So the problem with that theory is it doesn't go. Okay? He didn't just faint and then get up. The second one is they stole the body. This one you find in the New Testament. The Pharisees, who is some other group of priestly people, basically go up and say, oh, the guards were startled and the disciples came in the night, beat them up, and they stole the body. There's one problem with this, though. If they steal the body and then say he's risen from the dead, I don't know if you know this, but in the 1st century they didn't really have fridges. Somewhere down the line it would start stinking. someone would go to Peter's house, who was the leader of the church, and be like, hey, Peter, dude, when was the last time you bathed, man? What the heck? Well, haven't you heard of deodorant? This is the first century, probably not, but sheesh. No, that's just not, that's the funny one. The real thing is, stealing a body would barely give them a reason to die for their faith. Oh yeah. So the disciples, these people who claimed that they saw Jesus after he rose from the dead, were brutally murdered for their faith. You have Peter, he was crucified on a cross that looked like an X, and all he said, he was crucified upside down, because he said, I'm not worthy to be crucified like Christ. His brother Andrew was crucified on a cross that looked like an X. You find this in extra-biblical literature where the Romans and some other people wrote down what they did to these people who claimed to be Christians. You have Paul, who was beheaded, probably in the Colosseum. You guys know the Colosseum? Probably in that thing. You had Christians for the next 100 years being put on poles and set alight, set on fire, so they can make cool torches for Nero's garden. Yeah. Stealing a body, then claiming that he's risen from the dead to your death, either he literally picked the 12, actually more like 500 stupidest people in the world to be his disciples, or they were telling the truth. It's not very frequently for someone to die for, people might die for something they think they believe, but people don't die for something that they know is not true. Nobody does that. No matter how psychotic you are, you don't die, especially in this century, when their view of truth, being Jewish, was very absolute. You don't die for your faith if you don't think it happened. With this, you probably heard Reno talk a bit about, this is the hallucination that probably all of them might have seen a hallucination in a group. Yeah, probably not. I don't know if you see the same things that I see in my dreams. That's just weird. Stay away from me. You will not have my number nor my address. My name is not Jurec, it's George. Anyway, that's not how hallucinations work. You don't see the same things at the same time. Then go and say things like, I didn't put up scripture here, but there's a part where I think in the book of John, in the book of Acts, it mentions that Peter mentions we touched him. This is profound. And he didn't say we touched a dead guy. He didn't say we touched a ghost. Sorry, Jesus. No. We touched. Sorry, you know that weird thing in the movies where they, ghost? Yeah. No. They touched the flesh. He'd still walk through walls, which is pretty cool, according to the scriptures. But that just doesn't happen when you steal a body. You don't have conversations with it, unless you're really weird. The other one, they say Jesus never died in the first place. This is specifically true of the religion Islam, where in the Quran, there's a verse that says Jesus never died. He was on the cross, and then, what happened was, they have a bunch of different theories to try and, I was at a talk where this was a very big topic. There was a debate between a Muslim and Christian, very civilized. It's okay to debate, in case you were wondering. And the Muslim guy said, there was this guy, Simon, from the city of Cyrene in North Africa, and he helped Jesus carry the cross. So what the Lord did was, he changed their faces around so that Simon looked like Jesus, and then Jesus could escape, and then he ascended to heaven. The problem with that is, though, if God did that, why would he want it to seem that it's Jesus being crucified if it's not? And then 600 years later write down, oh, by the way, he never died. The fact that Jesus died, we'll get to that. Sorry, I'll get to that. There was the hallucination. Oh, I did put it up here. Okay. The disciples made it all up. This one links to that one. Stole the body, made it all up. Okay. So Jesus either swoons, he doesn't really die, or they stole the dead body and then said that, and then they made up this whole story to try and be great. If you die for your faith, you totally did it for the money, the fame, the girls, and the cars, right? Half of them weren't even married, they never got the chance. You don't make stories up about dead people rising from the dead. Not in that century. Because then again, every Roman emperor believed he was a god. Every ruler, like Herod, treated himself like he's this being to be worshipped. What makes Jesus so different? Well, the difference is, if a man dies brutally at the hands of Roman soldiers, and you don't find the body, and you have about 500 people saying they see him 40 days after he's risen from the dead, you can conclude that it probably happened. These theories have been circulating as an attack against Christianity for about 300 years. Every single one of these theories have been answered. Some people still don't accept the answers. That doesn't make them less true or less probable. If you want to go a bit into the science thereof, scientific arguments, not that this is a purely science thing, go on what the highest probability is. The same goes for history. So if I get to an archaeological site and I find a text in Greek, I'm not going to go, Christopher Columbus was here. Yeah. Christopher Columbus was right here. Yeah, he was, it's Greek. You're going to expect the Greeks to be there, not Christopher Columbus. In the same way, if you go to Israel, into a Jewish community, that if they accuse someone of blasphemy, because that's what they accuse Jesus of, they kill the person. And they ensure that he's dead. It's not really easy. It's not like you book a ticket and you're a fugitive to North America in those days. It's really hard to run away from the people who watch you wherever you go. Jesus was really famous. We know this because not only because the Bible says so, Jesus let me this know because the Bible says so, there are other sources outside of the Bible, 39 of them. Some people would, some liberal scholars would tone it down to 10. I go with a bit more orthodox view that it's 39. Just to give you 3 examples of the ones that we mostly agree on. And you don't have to remember this. This is just to give you an idea that there are other writers. Some of them are Roman. Some of them were Jewish and never believed in Jesus. And some of them were just general historians, also of Roman or Greek descent, who wrote about Jesus. Now the reason this is important is, if I say, okay, the Bible says, oh yeah, just because you believe that. But what if people who are enemies to the Jewish people and enemies to the idea of Jesus write the same things that the people write who love him? Then you have a bit more proof. Because let's say you and I have a disagreement on something that happened. And you're right, and I'm brutally, horribly wrong. And someone comes in who doesn't even like you. You know, let's say she thinks you're the scum of the earth. You don't, right? That's great. But this is for the sake of the arguments. I like using you as examples. It's fun. I never get to do this. I usually speak to like very older crowds and they get really offended. But anyway, so let's say you think he's the scum of the earth, but you come in and you're like, Jurec, listen, hey, bro, I don't even like, is your name Kevin? Okay, great. I don't even like Kevin. I think my hair is better than his. But the point is, Kevin is telling the truth. Okay, and you just have to accept that. And you give me the story, and I listen to his story, I'm like, oh wow, Kevin was right. If she liked Kevin with everything in her, I could be like, you're just saying that because you like him. But if she doesn't, we have a case. And this is where that part comes in. The disciples couldn't have made it up if other people who don't even agree with them said the same things. And there are 39 of those. And by the way, for ancient sources, very close to the date on which the crucifixion happened, that's brilliant. You don't have that for Julius Caesar. You don't have that for Homer's Odyssey, which is a work of poetry anyway. You don't have that for Hannibal crossing the Alps with the elephants. Who knows about that story? Who knows about the story of Hannibal? He was a Roman officer, and he crossed the Alps with war elephants. Okay, now most people I know, and especially in the circles that I walk in, they believe that with all of their hearts. There's no real textual evidence for it. And if there is, it's years and years and years and years later. Hundreds. The closest manuscript we have talking about Jesus dying on the cross is about 125 years, which is really good if you consider the fact that it was written on papyrus. Also, you have Josephus, who's a Jewish historian, who writes at the time of Jesus' death and resurrection and after the destruction of Jerusalem, which happened 70 years after Jesus left earth. And he talks about these people who call themselves Christians. And they are Christians because they followed this guy who was the Christ. And they believed and they saw him and he died. And he shows that he died under Pontius Pilate, under Caesar Augustus, in this province of Judah on this day. That's how specific you have it. And he didn't ever convert to Christianity. So there we have one source. You have Tacitus, who's a Roman historian, who writes about it as well. And I think I give... this one, the Da Vinci Code nonsense. Who of you have read Dan Brown's book, The Da Vinci Code? Okay, 2 of you. It's horrible. It really sucks. Listen, I'm not a fan of Dan Brown. If you like Dan Brown, you're allowed to. I think it sucks. I think it smells like rotten cheese, which can smell good depending on the kind of cheese. I really like blue cheese. That's irrelevant. The point is, it really sucks, okay? Dan Brown basically wrote the story where Jesus falls in love with Mary Magdalene, runs off to heck knows where. I don't know, Argentina. I'm kidding. It's not Argentina. But then he hides there from, I don't know, the world. Yeah, I don't know. There's just no historical evidence for it, so I'm not even going to waste time on that one. See, the others, you can still kind of think, okay, yeah, people don't usually die and rise from the dead. Okay, yeah, it's possible. But I think we've established that he's dead. There's this cool Wimmy called Dr. Gary Habermas. He's good friends of a friend of mine, and we Skyped him last year. He's from the U.S., really smart guy. If any of you have seen the movie The Case for Christ about Lee Strobel, he's actually a guy who acts a younger version of him is in that movie. And Dr. Gary Habermas is probably the world's leading scholar, smart guy on this subject of the resurrection. And Dr. Gary Habermas, when he wrote his PhD, wrote a thing that he called the minimal facts method. So he identified about 12 facts that atheist and Christian scholars agree on concerning that, the resurrection. And the first part is this one, the death of Jesus by crucifixion. It starts with his death, which I ranted on for at least 15 minutes. He died brutally by crucifixion. Most people believe that. There's one guy in the U.S. who thinks that he didn't even exist. You have a bit of a problem if you have more than 6,000 copies of the New Testament, which is the most well-preserved document in antiquity, by the way. There's nothing better. There's no document that matches it. Just the other day we found another one that dates. We're not sure what the date is, but Dr. Gary Habermas writes about that document as well. The second one is the empty tomb. We all know, and mostly all scholars, atheist and Christian, agree that when they came there was no one. And everyone freaked out. It's like, oh my goodness, where is he? I left him right there. Dead people don't rise, but they don't walk unless they're alive. Oh wow. And then they saw him. And they were startled. By the way, people, if you read the biblical narrative, it's not like the people who write the Gospels who are like, we saw him and we immediately believed. They're like, oh my goodness, what the heck? You're alive. Yeah, because it's not every day your friend who died the other day walks through the door and says, hey, can I eat fish with you? Because that's what he did. Literally, he went to their boats and they just had a big catch of fish. And he's like there on the shore of Galilee, but being like, I can't fish, boy. Like that doesn't, dead people don't buy fish, okay? Right? Sometimes, like, my dad lives in Canada, and they do ice fishing there, and I was there this December, and I really wanted to go, but, my dad didn't want to because it was too cold. But basically, they drill a hole in the ice and they fish. Sometimes I think that those people are dead because it's like minus 25 with the wind chills, minus 40, and like, is there a fish yet? Okay, so they're near to death, but they're not dead yet, anyway. They have heaters and stuff. The other one is the post-resurrection appearances. I just spoke about why these appearances are real, but the scholars overwhelmingly agree that people saw him. Whether they agree that those seeings were real or not is a different story. However, everyone agrees that he was seen. And if he was seen, then you have to do something with that. If everyone sees me Friday, like, I saw Jurec, I saw him, there he was, and you're like, no, I just don't believe you. It just can't happen. You can't see people, This isn't the Sixth Sense, where it's like, I see dead people. No. They didn't say, this is, we saw him. And here's the best part. Some of the people that saw him, and this is what makes it so great, is are the people that buried him. Some of them were Pharisees. Like Joseph of Arimathea, who was the man who bought Jesus' body off the cross. He probably, there's no scripture to confirm this, but because he was the guy who buried him and he was among the disciples, he probably saw him. There were the two men walking on the road to Emmaus, and they were having this conversation. Jesus kind of chills behind them, and just like, hey, can I eat with you all? And they're sitting at the table, and somewhere down the line they just realized, oh my goodness, it was him. What do you do with those two people? They had no reason to believe it was him, but somewhere down the line in the conversation, he disappears from their sight, and they're like, but he ate with us. This is very important, by the way. Food is important right here, because ghosts, food, stuff, no. The fourth one right here is the origin of the Christian faith. The origin of the Christian faith is based off the idea that Jesus came to earth as a baby, human being baby, that cries, poops his pants, and needs to be taken care of. Yeah. I'm going to make it as real and human as possible. Don't get me wrong, I believe he's God. But it's not blasphemous to tell you that he was a baby that pooped his pants because he was. It makes it more real. That's how real he is. And it was so real that he became a human being that walked around, caused a heck of a stir in his own community because he loved them so much and believed that he could die for the sins, that they killed him. because they believed he was blaspheming. And in the origin of the Christian faith, there is no such thing as the Christian faith before the resurrection. There is no faith when he dies. There's no Christianity when he's dead on the cross. You don't believe in a dead God. You don't believe in someone who died. His disciples, they were scattered. They were heck knows where. The origin of the Christian faith, that which drove 2,000 years of history, is in his resurrection. Because if he didn't rise, what the heck were those people thinking? Deserting their families to get killed by Roman soldiers, being brutally murdered in the same way or worse than Jesus was. I rest my case on this one for you to decide. The next part is Messianic prophecy. This kind of adds to that which I already said. This is mostly based on the biblical evidence itself. You can't really look for evidence from unbelieving sources when it comes to prophecy. However, what you can see is the following. I'll get to that. First, we're going to define Messianic prophecies. Messianic prophecies are predictions concerning the Jewish Messiah. This is really important. The reason that's important is Jesus was born in Judah. That's where the word Jewish comes from the tribe of Judah, that little area right there. From a Jewish mother who was married to a Jewish guy who fled to Egypt under the reign of, when it was like Tiberius and those guys in Rome. And it's really important to know why this part isn't as important as this part. He wasn't just any Messiah, because David is also called a Messiah in the Bible. He's a kind of anointed king. They poured oil over his head. Mashiach, he's a Messiah. He's a person who oil was poured over. That's basically what it means. So he was a king. So it's not any king, it's this king. So it was the king that the Jews, from the time that they left Egypt, the Hebrews believed, there's going to come this guy somewhere down the line. He's going to be a lot like Moses, and he's going to save us from our enemies. They believed this with all of their hearts, and the Romans mocked them for it so bad. Because where is this guy? Where is he now? You're under our rule. You're stuck. You've been in exile so many times. You've been taken from your country so many times. You find Hebrew writings and stuff in Babylon, which is basically modern-day Turkey and those areas. You find proof that they were led away from their land. And they were waiting for this guy to pitch. Messianic prophecies are found in the Old Testament, which is basically the Hebrew part of the Bible. And Messiah is the Hebrew word meaning anointed one. I mentioned that. It's the same as the Greek word Christ. The Greek word Christ, or Christos, is basically just the Greek word for which means to throw oil over someone. Some scholars believe that there are 300 plus prophecies about the Messiah. He would come from the line of Judah, being Jewish. Where we find this is in Genesis 49 verse 10, where Jacob blesses his sons and says to Judah, the scepter. The scepter is that, not the thing you hypnotize people with, but that's basically what it looks like. So a scepter is the thing that a king had, which he stretched out if he gave someone favor. And this scepter, that kingliness, will never depart from the tribe of Judah. And you find the fulfillment in Luke 3 verse 33, when Jesus is born from the line of David, which traces back to the line of Judah. He will be born in Bethlehem. You find that in Micah 5 verse 2 and Matthew 2 verse 4 to 6. In Matthew, there's a narrative about Jesus being